Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, this is Leah Brown with the Greater Des Moines Partnership. We'll go ahead and get started here now with a virtual webinar regarding strategic planning and remote workforce leadership. We'd like to welcome Shannon Welch, VP of Sales with Local IQ. Shannon's got some slides to present and an engaging presentation today. And then again, once he's completed the presentation, we welcome you to send us any questions, which we'll be reading through the chat function in Zoom today. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate everybody joining and giving me a chance to talk with you this morning. And I hope this first slide here I put together can give you a bit of a laugh. If you can see me on video and you can recognize, that's me up in the top right-hand corner. And next to me was a visitor we had. I call this the new normal office environment, which many of you may be experiencing. We've gone to a complete 100% remote office environment at Local IQ in the Des Moines Register. Probably during the first week of COVID-19 and kind of some of the announcements that came out, our organization started to go remote, and we probably had about 80% of our workforce there. Within 2 weeks, we were at 100%. We had some folks that worked in the design studio downtown that we had to utilize our IT department as well as some management to make sure that we could get those folks get them set up, get them connectivity at home, make sure they had access to intranet. And you can see this is just a few of my folks on my sales staff. Every morning at 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock, we have a check-in and check-out meeting. There's a lot of fun things that happen. We get to see kind of a glimpse behind everybody's life at home. We get to see significant others walking around. And we get some visitors that were unplanned. And that visitor right there is my 6-year-old son, Mason. He goes to Waukee Elementary. He goes to Woodland Hills. And he's out of school, and he was home that day. And so he put on his, if you ever seen the movie Saw, he put on his jigsaw mask and came in and said hi to everybody. So people got a kick out of that. At least once a day, he comes in and interrupts the meeting. So if he walks in here, I apologize, but I think he's focused on his tablet doing some at-home learning today. What I'm going to discuss today, I think some of these things will be relevant. Some of it may be probably already understood, or maybe you're kind of getting some communication through different media outlets on this. But I want to walk through a study that Nielsen recently put out that just talked about current consumer behavior. And it started with what things look like from a buying perspective in China. And then it kind of pivoted to Italy, and it's kind of pivoted into other countries, into the US, of what the buying behavior looks like and what the expected outcome is once markets reopen. I want to look at some of the industry categories that were considered to be essential, what categories might be at risk, and then the ones that were kind of defined as in limbo. Not really sure what was going to happen there. Keep an eye on those. I want to look at a couple of consumption trends. There's a lot of consumption trends that are going on right now. As you can probably imagine, there's a lot more activity, sharing, ad buying going on within Facebook and other social platforms. News consumption is up. You know, we're seeing doubles in page views in some of our markets just related to the content. People are consuming more content, wanting to get more information. Streaming services, as you can imagine, are up. I'll talk to you about a little bit of a stat we saw there. You know, folks are home. They're leveraging Netflix. They're leveraging Hulu. Over the top. So those CTV streaming services are going up. No surprise there, as folks are quarantined at home and social distancing, that they're finding outlets for entertainment. I want to talk a little bit about Google. The reason I really like the Google piece of it, a little bit outdated. This was released. These stats I'll show you about 3 weeks ago. We will get, and I can follow up with that, more stats here at the end of March. But I just want to give you a kind of a trend as to what people are actually searching for related to these industry categories. And I put some nuggets behind that just kind of walks through a little bit of the more of a why. I do want to talk a little bit also about business strategy shifts. Mostly what we're seeing, as we have thousands of partners across the country, we're able to get some feedback and insight from everybody in regards to what they're doing moving forward, whether that's pausing marketing, whether it's canceling because they're just not able to operate, or whether it's taking a different look at their business through different lenses and trying to figure out moving forward what kind of strategies they're going to put in place to be prepared when they come out of COVID-19 pandemic, but also I think just some things that were maybe put on hold, or some folks that are reimagining and innovating their business in different ways than they didn't do in the past. The last piece I'll talk a little bit is about remote leadership. I don't think this is new. I've got a stat that I'll share that kind of walks through what remote cultures really look like right now. It's almost 50% of companies are either already remote or have some pieces of remote to them. I can tell you my sales organization has been remote for 7 years, ever since I came here. Our folks start their day at home, they end their day at home. Their business is a little more consultation. They're meeting with clients. They're out meeting with business owners. And so they don't spend a lot of time in the office behind the desk. So what are we doing? And then I also looked at just trying to keep up with what other companies are doing, or what some organizations are doing, and maybe give some ideas and some tips to folks, as well as tools that you may or may not have heard of to help connect during remote leadership. And then some question and answer. This first piece here, again, I've got a link down here at the bottom of this, and I would encourage you to read this. I can be sure that Leo or myself gets this out to you. But this was developed by Nielsen, and it's basically the 6 human behavior thresholds of COVID-19 concerns. You'll notice there that there's a big green bar around number 5. And what that indicates is what our organization has discovered or agreed on is that we're in number 5, which is called restricted living. Again, this started with, China. What did China look like? What thresholds did they go through? And then what we are trying to do, especially with our partners, is try to figure out where consumers are at, what the behaviors look like, and then how do we prepare for what number 6 is, which is living a new normal. I'll walk through these a little bit and just try to kind of go brief through them. It might be hard to read, so I'll call some points out. The number 1 stage that was indicated was proactive health mind buying. And you'll see what it outlines here is how a consumer behavior shifted, and then what were some event markers around that. So from an event marker of stage 1, minimal localized cases generally linked to an arrival from another infected country. You could probably go back to maybe mid-February, late February, probably not early March, to see that there was an interest of rise in products to support overall maintenance of health and wellness. So it was kind of the beginning stages. Number 2 becomes a reactive. So people start to prioritize products that are essential. So an example would be face masks. You see governments launching health and safety campaigns. You see some local transmission and kind of the first reporting of related deaths. Number 3 was called pantry preparation, so stockpiling. Shelf-stable foods, broader assortment of health safety, spike in store visits, growing basket sizes. Quarantine started to happen. I would say when you look at that stage 3, that's probably where we started to see the toilet paper craze go. Folks were running to stores. They were panic buying. They found things like sanitizer and toilet paper to make sure that they'd be able to have enough essential things in their home as we went into this. And so that's what that looked like. But then eventually what happened is we went into a quarantine living preparation. This started to look at things like increased online shopping, store visits decreased. If you do happen to visit the grocery store now, like I did over the weekend to get some stuff for my family, you notice that there's a lot of people with masks. I saw people with bandanas. I saw people with scarves. Store visits are down. goods are coming out of stock, and there's a strain on the supply chain. These are emergency actions. A lot of restrictions around large gatherings that we're seeing. Schools and public places started to close down, and the percentages of people diagnosed rose. Again, getting to number 5, where we're at now, current state, severely restricted shopping trips. A lot of online fulfillment is becoming limited. There are price concerns as limited availability impacts pricing. This is kind of where we're at right now. Everybody's restricted at home. Certain businesses are closed. So, some bars and restaurants are closed. Some are offering takeout, curbside delivery. Salons are closing. Gyms are closing. So we're very restricted in the fact that really the only essential things that remain are what we can consume. What we're working to, and we've I don't know if I say coined it, but we've gotten to what stage 6 looks like, and we don't know when that will be. We are closely monitoring places like China, where this first started, to see kind of as or if they return, because they're further ahead in the infection that we were. As they start to return, what do we learn from that? If they start sending people back to work, is there a second wave? As they send people back to work, what are they doing to make sure that second wave doesn't come? What does consumption look like? And so we're kind of looking at this grand reopening, great reopening, or kind of roadmap to reopening. What do we do to get to the point where people return to their daily routines? Work reopens, schools reopen, but they may be operating with a renewed cautiousness. There may be shifts in supply chain, so use of e-commerce and hygiene practices may change. Again, from a government perspective, quarantines would lift beyond the region. The country's most affected hotspots return to normal. And so the underlying theme of this slide and what we're studying is what kind of happened in this phase, where we sit now, and what we're trying to prepare for in number 6. So what Burrell reached or released at the beginning of this was, I need to preface this with, this was a crisis category for businesses that they basically expected or predicted in late February, early March. These are the businesses that they saw would be considered essential. Things like auto repair services, food stores, home health care, hospitals, office equipment supplies. And then when you look at risk, these were the businesses that, due to quarantine and restrictions, that there was a suggestion that these would be at risk, and not a lot of surprises here. Amusement parks, salons, casinos, hotels, movie theaters, places where people could gather at, entertainment, more luxury, those pieces, travel being another one, that would be very at risk. And I think this list lines up with that. Some of the things that were in limbo, not really sure what's going to happen. What's going to happen with apparel and accessory? How about contractors? What does financial look like? What do legal services look like? What does real estate look like? And so, again, I'll preface this with, this was the assumption from Burrell of what would fit into essential, at-risk, and limbo as the pandemic kind of started to grow. What I want to pivot to is, I've got 3 slides here on something that was pulled at the beginning to first week of March. What we are doing is paying attention to this, and we're seeing how Google search trends, or how somebody sits down at their mobile device or their desktop and still consumes or shops or seeks out services or businesses, and how that's looking. And what we saw, and again, Leah, I can give you an update kind of month to month as we go through this, but what we saw was, these were the 7 industries that were peaking. Nonprofits and charities, probably no surprise there. Health and medical, not necessarily the folks searching, but the conversion. So conversions of people actually buying, checking out, or actually clicking in and looking at things. There was a 24% increase in medical supplies and a 47% increase in pharmaceuticals. Note this is nationwide. Business management, it was very specific. It was folks that were searching for things like setting up remote workforces, office supplies for home, or there was another category, about leading remote. How do you lead your team remote from a management perspective? Financial services and insurance on it uptick. I know I've talked with some local financial institutions who are seeing people that are reaching out, either asking for financial advice or looking at options to skip a mortgage payment or skip an auto payment or perhaps do a refinance to save some money right now. Beauty, skin, and personal care products, a lot of this ties specifically to online. Folks are not able to visit their salon, get their nails done. So what they're looking at is how can I get personal care products delivered to me? How can I still take care of myself from a beauty skin perspective and not have to go out to the store? On-demand media, and then an interesting one that I saw, greetings, gifts, and flowers. There was a 15% increase in searching for greeting cards. There was a 30% increase for gift baskets and a 43% increase for floral arrangements. Firsthand, I can tell you that my sister-in-law owns a small flower shop in Perry, Iowa, where I'm from. She also manages a 24/7 fitness gym, and it's interesting. Her business on the fitness side of it saw a closure and obviously saw kind of a downtick in that business. But from her floral business, there was a lot of the folks in the community that were supporting her, either taking things out to senior living communities, sending gift baskets, flowers to friends, things of that nature. So there was an uptick there on her end. Mixed performance. So this was kind of the middle of the road, kind of in limbo. Not really sure what these businesses were going to look like, but I'll speak through some of them. It was interesting from a real estate perspective. Listings, we're seeing increased volume while conversion rates are trending down. So what that means is across the country, not seeing a lot of movement as far as homes selling or showings being done, but people are at home and they're looking at listings. So while I may not be in a position to buy right now, I'm definitely spending more time because I'm at home looking and taking a visit. Home improvement, we've seen a lot of mixed across the country with our home improvement categories. A lot of them are trying to pivot to online consultations. A lot of them are trying to do what they call kind of a no contact consultation, either a phone call or a quote over a webinar. What they are seeing and what we're seeing specifically around performance in home improvement is that conversion rate is going up. So I need to be clear there in saying that it's not necessarily that they're seeing a lot of inquiries for leads. They're not seeing a bunch of people calling for roof, for HVAC, for windows and things like that. But the leads that they are getting or the calls that they are getting are converting faster. What they're seeing is that the folks that are reaching out have more time on their hands. They're at home. They're looking at their windows. They're looking at their outdoor patio space, and they're kind of a end of the funnel buyer. They're a serious buyer, which is encouraging. Home furniture, home furniture, we've seen a lot of closure, and so the ability to walk in the door is not there. But I did notice there's some smaller ticket items that are ticking up, such as small appliances. So folks that are, maybe ordering something like one specific was a coffee or espresso machine. Somebody who may be normally going to their local Starbucks or maybe going to the office, maybe they're upgrading or adding something into their home so that they can have their daily coffee fix. Bedding is another one that's seeing an uptick. There wasn't any real statistics around why bedding, but I can imagine folks maybe looking for new bedding. There's kind of a theme of, washing your bedding, disinfecting the home, having cleaning services come in. So those were two areas, again, smaller ticket items, less investment there. Automotive repair is up 44%, while dealers are down 42%. Whether that be oil change or whether that be, making sure that the engine has been checked, that fluids, things like that. People, it appears, are still wanting to or being prepared to travel. And so, you can imagine if there was a complete shutdown to where repair services were not open and, you didn't have your oil change or your car wasn't up to date, tires weren't cleaned up, you could have a bit of a challenge. But dealers, and this is strictly search volume, as far as people looking for dealerships and looking for vehicles, that's down. So people aren't necessarily right now looking to purchase new vehicles per Google, but they are wanting to make sure that their vehicles are repaired and taken care of proper maintenance so that they can still utilize their vehicles. Retail, just in general, broad category, kind of in limbo. Jobs and education, modest, 8 to 10% increase in new careers and vocational training. So there's an 8% increase in new careers and specifically a 10% increase in vocational training. Folks that are home, maybe wanting to look for a new career, right now might not be the ideal time as far as the market and what unemployment looks like, but it is giving people a chance at home to maybe take a look at new opportunities, as well as, training education pieces. I know at home, we've got a 6-year-old at home who is now out of school. School's doing a very good job of giving us some tips, giving us some classroom instruction that we can work with him every day. But we pivoted to downloading a couple of different apps on his mobile device that allow him to do, a little bit of learning from the mobile device, as well as, we continue keeping up with reading and math, doing things like sitting down and having him making a card for grandma and grandpa and writing things out like that. So we are seeing also in that sector a little bit of an increase for kind of online instruction for children. I thought this one was very interesting for anyone on the legal service side. So phone calls are trending up. So from a Google perspective, people are searching and making calls for legal service as opposed to doing web forms, which is interesting because we generally see from a legal perspective, there is a lot of web forms. So people that will either email something over or fill something out that they need a consultation. Well, right now they're getting to the phone, likely because they are at home, they have more time to get on the phone. However, 30% of these calls are going unanswered, which is quite a change for that industry. Is that due to you don't have somebody sitting in the office able to answer that? Is it due to the business is actually closed? So very interesting to see that as calls are trending up, that the calls were going unanswered at this time. The last one, a lot of obvious here, but hit the hardest, travel, tourism. So air, cruise, and vacation, specifically those 3 searches are down as high as 50%. I believe air was down about 41%, cruise was 48%, and vacations, whether it was within domestic or abroad, 50% down. We're seeing a lot of our travel clients in general are just on a complete pause because they don't feel that people are looking for vacations right now. They're not getting inquiries, and the Google search volume would support that. Bars and restaurants, that's a tricky one. There was a Yelp released a stat about a couple of weeks ago that showed that searches for French restaurants were down. I don't know why I picked that, but that was just one that stood out. However, pizza was up. You can kind of draw the conclusion there. But, as most of us are seeing, curbside pickup and delivery is helping some business owners. We had a conversation with a business owner in one of our markets where the business owner who owned a restaurant said they were actually operating more efficiently and more profitable right now. And they weren't exactly a curbside pickup or delivery prior to this. And what they've seen, although unfortunate that they don't have as much staff in there because they don't have people coming in, running on more of a skeleton staff of just kind of a kitchen staff and one manager is allowing them to remain profitable because they're still able to get the food out. They're still able to bring revenue in, but they're limiting some of their overhead, which is encouraging for business owners that are finding that positive because it does sustain the probability that they'll be able to remain open after markets reopen. Live entertainment is an obvious. Conferences, events, sporting events. We're seeing all kinds of things like professional sports are on suspension. There's been some NCAA cancellation, conferences that are canceled. Those large gatherings took a hit. Sports and fitness, this is a really interesting one. One thing I don't have highlighted here is that there was a 43% decrease in the 3rd week of March via Yelp of people looking for gyms or fitness instruction. Makes sense. People aren't able to go to the gym right now. They're not able to get in front of their personal trainer. However, there was a 162% increase in fitness equipment. Makes a lot of sense. People are at home. They still want to continue with fitness. So maybe am I going to add to my in-home gym? Or perhaps I'm going to put in an at-home gym. An example, one of my neighbors down the road, about 2 weeks ago, we were outside with the kids playing in our yard, practicing social distancing, and we looked down and Shields had pulled up in his driveway and was unloading a treadmill and some other exercise equipment. So I thought that was a really interesting stat. I think it's important that when you look at each category that you just don't look at the overall broad trend. You kind of look at different pockets of that. Again, going back from French restaurants to pizza, or looking at, fitness and gym instruction versus actual equipment in the home. Another one I thought was interesting, which made a lot of sense, especially for me and my wife, is our 6-year-old is home. We are fortunate that our daycare is still open right now, and that we're able to take our 3-year-old and our 1-year-old there. Both of us are working from home. And, with a 6-year-old, it's manageable. With a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, you can imagine it would be very hard for us to manage. But there are some searches up for sports camps and programs, and that's likely to kids being out of school. Not sure, how I or people may feel about that. But for my 6-year-old, even if school continues to delay, he goes to a program at his school called Beyond the Bell, where we take him there in the morning and we take him there after school hours. Well, since it's school related, that's not going to continue. So depending on our thoughts and our feelings around, where we want our kids to or to not be, it's likely that sports camps and programs, there may be an opportunity there for kids who need a place to go. Maybe not. Maybe the right move is to keep your child at home, but that's really for everybody to decide. And then building construction and industrial and manufacturing taking a hit. So construction in general going down, industrial and manufacturing going down. The last piece I'll talk about just around media trends. Again, I will tell you news content is up significantly. Social media is up significantly. But last week, Nielsen released another report on their rating system where it showed that streaming services saw a 36% increase since February. This was released by USA Today, my company. I've got a link there to the article if you want to read it. I can make sure that we can get it to everybody, but it makes a ton of sense. There's a lot of, Netflix and Hulu are always releasing new programs. It's like 30 to 40% of the market has cut the cord and no longer, going with cable or satellite. And so as folks are home and they don't have anything to do or anywhere to go, they're consuming a lot of streaming services. I'm going to pivot over to business strategy shifts. Leah, unless you have any questions in the chat, I'll continue here on what we're seeing businesses do outside of, maintaining their marketing spend or putting together new marketing spends. So the first thing that we're seeing is a lot of data analysis. We have a lot of organizations who are sitting down and saying, okay, we're at a pause right now, or, we're taking this time not necessarily to be defensive, but it's trying to put together an offensive strategy. So what folks are doing is taking a look at their sales data and basically trying to figure out, who their best customers are or what the opportunity is. One opportunity may be very simple. If you're a restaurant and 80% of your business is dine-in, where 20% of your business is carry-out or delivery, how can you start to figure out in the future if something like this was to happen again, or just innovate your model? How do you focus on increasing the share of that 20% for carry-out or delivery? You can do that if you have your data segmented. So what that would mean is that you would find a data analysis company who could take a look at your sales data, look at who your best customers are, look at the geography they're coming from, looking at their demographics, and then looking at your different business models or products and solutions, and try to make some determination about how you kind of move forward with this so that you can still bring in revenue. People are very simply looking at their Google Analytics. Google Analytics, for those who are not familiar, is basically the eyes and the ears of your website. Behind the scenes, as folks come to your website, there's a lot of information that you can gather about their search habits, about their demographics, about the amount of time that they spent on your site, where they come from, what pages they specifically engage with. Are they coming in through mobile devices or desktop devices? Are they coming through based on your advertising, or are they finding you in some other way? So what a lot of businesses are doing that we're seeing is they're taking time to sit back and say, okay, why don't I analyze my traffic? What happened last year in March? What happened in January and February? What's happened now in March? And why is that? It's advantageous to understand what your customers are doing on your site, because they're not able to talk to you face to face, but you can draw a lot of inferences from your data on your own site that basically says, okay, this is where people are navigating, this is what they're engaging with. How do we make sure that we nurture those audiences along? A lot of website review going on, updates, cleanups, refresh and focus on conversion capabilities. You've got businesses, as I mentioned, in the home improvement sector who are looking at how can we offer, a virtual consultation? How can we do a no contact consultation? Folks looking at possibly going to an e-commerce capability. Some people looking at, if you're a restaurant, to stay within that industry and you don't offer the ability to order online, maybe that's something that they want to put in place. Maybe your practice was generally, hey, we have a website, we have our menu, we have our business hours, we have our contact information. That is great to get people in the doors. Right now, we didn't plan for this, and how are we going to make it easier for our customers to be able to get online and order online, versus maybe we lose that customer because they make a call and we don't answer, or they don't want to make the call, or they simply just turn away because they're not able to make an online order. Other business metrics, these are getting really into the weeds about the processes that individuals are going through. So we've got a Windows provider who's got 60 locations across the country. And what the CEO there has decided to do is basically do kind of an open door, one-on-one with his dealers week to week. And they're pivoting that conversation. So that conversation used to be kind of an overview, or how are sales, what's your strategy, what's working and what's not working, just kind of a high level. And they're really getting into the weeds now, trying to figure out, okay, in the last year, what does your cost of marketing look like? Is it 15%? Is it 20%? Your peers over here at 10%. Why are they doing that? Then you dig into some really nitty gritty. Okay, what is your cost per lead? What's your cost of a customer acquisition? What's your cost of sale? Again, using some of that data to make a determination on where they spend their time right now. But honestly, just looking at the business as a whole, we get very busy in our lives where, we're looking at the top level number, we're looking at the revenue coming in, we're looking at performances, but these businesses are now trying to take a look at how can we fine tune our process and figure out in each of these different nuggets where we can improve a couple of numbers to become more profitable. Some lessons from the past. I collectively gathered this from a bunch of national colleagues of mine, of what they've seen where economic downturns have taught them, or have taught marketers, or have taught businesses. So just a couple of bullet points here. Assess your current marketing. I will tell you guys that, we've got a lot of partners, again, that have had to close their doors for whatever reason, and we understand that. So, we're putting in place 30-day pause on their campaigns, no billing, no advertising, allowing them to be able to kind of catch up and then kind of work with some of those strategies we talk about. Some folks who are, canceling completely and choosing to pick back up at another time. And we do have some businesses that are just doing something different. Again, from a restaurant example, maybe you were driving dine-in, but now your message is carry out, delivery, curbside. But history tells us that you can gain or lose market share during a downturn. An example would be if you are in a segment that is peaking up, let's say fitness equipment. Segment's peaking up, people are seeking that out, and all of your competition or your peers around you who are in a similar industry are deciding to pull back. Well, that clutter becomes less. You don't have as many people advertising. You don't have as many messages going out to you. Businesses are not as easy to be found. And so you can kind of stand out from your competition. There may be some risk there, but again, risk comes with opportunity. Understanding your customers, so know how they're redefining value. I think Google Analytics is a great way to look at your site and say, okay, what products are people engaging with right now at a higher rate than they were last year? Product pack portfolio, adding new services and focusing on innovation. I've talked about a couple of these: virtual consultations, online appointments, going from strictly dine-in to delivery. There's probably an opportunity for people to take a look at their business and understand that the market has shifted now to online buying, more face-to-face disconnection, and more connection needed from a digital perspective. And so some of this is going to force consumers and businesses alike to just naturally navigate to that process. And how do you figure that out? Same thing goes with remote leadership. Organizations who did not have remote leadership in place or didn't have any experience with that, that comes with quite a challenge. So not only, from a business perspective, revisiting the product portfolio, but also from a management perspective, how do we manage those teams? Tailoring your tactics, just becoming more strategic on customer segmentation and pricing. So what that means is you look at your data and you figure out, let's say you've got 5 solutions, 5 products, 5 services, which ones are performing the best, why are they performing the best, and what can you optimize right now, and can you set some pricing structures in place, such as 0% financing, or buy now, pay later, or book this and we'll do it once this lifts. Successful branding in a downturn shows compassion and understanding your customers. So being there for your community. And then really, I talked about the roadmap to reopen, or the great reopening, preparing for better days. This just too shall pass is something that I've seen a lot of people quote. And I think that's true. I don't see this, going on forever. So, we do have to understand that better days will come, and how do I set myself up to be prepared for that? This is just a quick snapshot of Google Analytics. For those who've never worked with Google Analytics, I'll just give you a high overview. Again, eyes and ears of your website. So, you can look at your sessions, which are, how many times does somebody actually come in and open up a site or a session on your site? Are there upticks? So if you see February 29, you see that uptick right there. What happened? Did you do an advertising campaign? Did you roll out a new promotion? What caused more people to come to your site at that peak? How many users are on your site? How many new visitors are you getting versus, old customers returning? How many pages are they looking at? How long are they spending on your site? Are they coming in from mobile or desktop? And then, as you can see here, what this is showing is kind of a year-over-year view. So you can look at year-over-year, month-over-month. You can look at certain time periods and try to make some assessments. This piece here is just around the data segmentation. So as you pull your sales data out, what are the pieces you can get? Demographic information, profitable segments based on age, average ticket, and the percentage of spend. If you've got geography information, you can tell the pockets of the market where your sales are coming from, very zip code specific. And the other thing I like is lifestyle purchase and media behaviors. From an address level, as you understand who your customer is, you can basically pull out and segment them to understand that a customer looks of this age, a customer is of this sex, a customer wants to be delivered media in this way. So you can kind of augment or optimize, I guess, your marketing towards that. The last 2 pieces I have are just on remote leadership. First slide is what we're doing. So we first proactively assisted our employees through IT with home office setup. Get everybody home, get them set up, make sure that they can work. We then gave them some tips around finding a quiet space, finding a lit up space, and then we gave them some advice on how to disconnect, take a walk, do a chore around the house, get up and move about your seat. We do daily check-ins and check-outs, and we have special visitors like I showed. We do a virtual happy hour on Fridays. I've seen a lot of this on social media. Friday at 4 o'clock, our checkout is we stay away from business. Everybody jumps on, folks grab their favorite cocktail, and we have some friendly conversation and just kind of keep some of that engagement and that morale and culture going on. We do a weekly online game show. I went ahead and put the link in here for you. It's Kahoot It. Kahoot It is one of my sales executives' significant other is a school teacher. And so each week we keep score, but we hop on. I moderate an online game show. And on the screen, a bunch of questions come up. You get to pick the category, 90s TV, sports, whatever you want. There's 10 questions. You answer multiple choice from your phone. And then we've kind of got some prizes at the end of, we're basically running this for about 10 weeks. But we're going to have some prizes at the end of this of, whoever had the highest score. Over communicating, obvious. We have a lot of communication coming on. Sometimes it might seem like a lot, but I think it's important. Virtual engagement I talked about, and again, just being more offense versus defense. And then creating a business as usual environment as much as we can. Folks getting out of bed, getting dressed, getting breakfast, having a plan for the day, and trying to be as strategic as possible versus just sitting back and waiting. This is the last slide I have. I'll open it up to questions, Leah. There's no real reason why I picked any of these, but I just wanted to give some insights into some of the things I see that are interesting. Google, I thought it was very interesting, decided at the beginning of March they're going to suspend annual performance reviews. Something our organization is looking at is right now the best time for us to sit down and do performance reviews like we normally would. There's a lot going on. There's a lot more strategy that needs to happen. I wouldn't call performance reviews a distraction. I think they're important. But I think it's very interesting that some organizations are saying, hey, let's reprioritize what's right, and then we'll get back to that. Gallup, again, found that 43% of U.S. employees already work remotely. It's probably the future state. It's something we need to plan for in the future. I think this forces us into maybe adapting or adopting sooner than we anticipated. But you can learn a lot from this so that you can understand as you navigate there what you do. Telework tools, we're on Zoom now. My organization uses Zoom and Teams. Skype and Trello are a couple other tools that you can look in to help keep your organization engaged. Kroger company, the individuals who are working in their grocery stores, they've given them wage increases. They've offered some financial assistance for those who don't have childcare. And then, in the case of emergencies, a paid leave opportunity. I picked my local daycare, thought it was great. We get 1 week vacation credit every year for our kids. They offered 2 weeks of vacation credit to any families who continued paying enrollment. Now, that's whether or not our child attends daycare. Ours still does attend. But the idea was that if folks needed to pull their kids out for a week or a couple of days or 2 weeks, or they just felt they needed to pull them out in general, if they supported the daycare in continuing with their enrollment fees, number one, it kept their employees working. Number two, it allows the daycare to stay open. And so I thought that was a really good message, and it was local, so I liked it. Our leadership team, as well as other leadership teams that I've seen across the country, are doing some different things, like CEOs are cutting out some salaries in the interim. Leadership is taking reductions in salaries. The idea is to try to avoid layoffs and furloughs to keep people intact. Again, I appreciate this. I know it was kind of more me talking and just sharing some insight. Happy to connect with anybody one-on-one. I'm sure Leah and team will get this in your hands so you can look through any of the nuggets you thought made sense for you. But I'll open it up for any questions, Leah.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Really appreciate you providing the insight that you have today. I did want to just remind everyone, if you are on your computer, you can add a message via chat if you have a question for Shannon today. I can also unmute phones if you're calling in via cell phone. briefly here, you can let us know if there is a question you'd like to ask, as we have just a little bit more time left today. Anyone out there on the phones that would like to ask a question as well? All right. Well, we are going to wrap up here then shortly. We will make the recording available likely within the next 24 to 48 hours. And Shannon, that would include the slides that you presented today with a trove of great information. I did also include that link via chat for the Nielsen Insights article. And I think that's just a great breakdown and snapshot to get a look at kind of some of those consumer behaviors that you were talking about. So thanks again, Shannon. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
No, I think at the end of the day, this is new to everybody. And so, what I was just trying to offer was just some of the things that we're seeing, any type of tips, but, I've been connecting with new faces, be that leaders, be that business owners, just kind of on a one-to-one conversation. I welcome that to anybody who would, like to chat. But yeah, I appreciate everybody allowing me some time to relay some information.
Great. Thanks again, everyone. Hope you have a happy and safe Monday, and we'll look forward to chatting with you soon. Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate it.